Okay, so I'm sitting here with the co-founders of Hello Darling. I feel like it's my turn to ask Bridget and Brendan a few questions, considering I've been the one getting grilled lately about my love life and my dating or lack thereof. So, guys, I thought today we'd delve into your new dating app, Hello Darling. So, starting off, how did you two meet?
How long have we known each other? Sort of 10, 12 years?
Yeah, 10 years. 10, 11 years. I met Brendan through my husband back in Perth. And I think our first encounter was at the Cot at a party.
Funny how you remember things. I think that was actually way down the track.
But that was our first business chat.
Business chat.
Yeah, no, we'd known each other for a while, but that was our first business chat. You came up to me and asked about how business was going. And at the time, I just started working with Emrata, I think.
Okay.
And then you said, oh, let's catch up for coffee and chat about that. Brendan was in finance. I had a swimwear brand for 14 years.
Yeah.
And then we started, I remember saying to Luke one day, like, Brendan's like a boy version of me when it comes to like business.
Do you agree, Brendan?
I can see what she means. Yeah.
Like there wasn't too many people in that group that kind of like
Had businesses, yeah.
Had businesses and chatting about business as much as we were. So like I was like quite drawn to Brendan. And then something in Amorance came about, like a little project. And I was like to Luke, do you reckon Brendan minds if I pick his brain a little bit and see if he wants to kind of get involved?
In what capacity would you have got involved in the swimwear?
Yeah, we're having a look at a few projects. It didn't end up happening because it was really difficult, the actual transactions, but we'd looked at them for a few months. We had a few meetings with a few agents over in America, and it was similar style of collaborations that Bridget had done previously with Emma Radikowski, Jesse James Decker, those types, but probably extending that, which would have meant a lot larger spend and investment.
And is that where you came in because you had the finance background?
It was probably some of it, but we're looking to kind of sort of de-risk some of the transactions that what had been done over time.
Okay.
So Bridget had done successful transactions and collaborations, but if it was going to be larger spends, and a lot of those style of deals are more cash up front, it's obviously really hard to figure out what you're going to sort of get in return. So we explored that, and it just ended up being that we didn't go ahead with the transactions. It was a bit too risky from a profile point of view, but we'd done probably 3 or 4 Zoom meetings together with agents out of America, and that was probably just looking to explore what else we're kind of going to do.
So why Bridget as a co-founder then? Obviously you've started to have these conversations surrounding business and you've obviously gelled and you like each other. What then made you leap into seeing each other as co-founders of a completely new business?
Yeah, it was. So I moved I'm from Perth, and so is Bridget. So I moved here about nearly 2.5 years ago to Sydney. So I actually moved. So I had a finance business for 10 years in Perth, and I'm actually moved to Sydney to do a startup, but in banking, a fintech.
Yeah.
I had probably 7 or 8 different concepts in different industries for startups. One being what eventuated in Hello Darling. But if you were going to ask me what was I going to Sydney to do, it was 99.9% I was going to do a banking platform. But the more that year went on, the more I kept going back to my other concepts for a number of reasons. And the more I spent time on Hello Darling throughout the back end of that year. So then it got to about September, October of that year. There's probably a bit more detail, which I've told other people and on some podcasts of. So there's a number of different elements about Hello Darling. So Hello Darling, we're trying to fix 2 problems really. One problem is that there's a lot of fatigue in traditional dating apps. So
what do you mean? As in people getting on and then not following through?
Yeah. So a lot of time spent swiping doesn't turn into matches. A lot of matches don't turn into conversations, and a lot of conversations don't turn into dates.
Oh, that's so strange. I've never noticed that.
So and look, that's not everyone's experience, but and it's to no fault of their own. Like Hinge and Bumble, that they're far bigger than what we are. Bumble has 50 million users. Hinge has 35 million users. So they're obviously enormous in that sense. But when you're 10 or 12 years on, it presents sort of other problems, and a lot of fatigue has been reported in that sense in the use of dating apps. So that's one problem that we want to fix. Which
you want to create, you want to see actual relationships come out of it, and not just one night stands.
Relationship, sure, but it's more just getting people on a date.
Yeah.
Whereas in when people talk about online dating,
Yeah.
the online part kind of sucks. You know,
I
that's
hate
only
it.
just a bridge to get to the date.
Yeah.
So if you can get more people on the actual date, which obviously the concept of Hello Darling is you go straight on a date.
Great.
So your bestie swipes for you. If both of those people say yes,
You
then
go straight on a
you
date.
go straight on a
So
date.
it cuts out the small talk, which is
Cuts
the
out the
part
small
that I
talk.
cannot stand.
I
That's
thought
why I
you'd be good at
avoid
that part, but yeah.
the small talk.
Yeah.
That's
Interesting small talk.
yeah, interesting. Not everyone else is good at it. That's the problem. That's why I avoid dating apps for that exact reason. So that's why I'm interested in Hello Darling, because the thought of having to chat, make small talk with some moron, most likely, is so unappealing to me. So I just avoid it altogether.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay,
So,
cool.
so that's sort of the one part of the problem that we're trying to fix. But I think this is my personal view on what I think some people, when they're looking at doing a dating app as a startup concept, is that they miss this part, which is the other part of the problem is that there's about 340 million dating app users in the world and only 6% of them pay. It's a really tough business model. People don't like paying for dating apps for a number of reasons. So we actually take a percentage of the total bill from the venue because we make the reservation.
I was wondering how you see. I pay for Raya.
Yeah, okay, so slightly different. That's a niche, which some people are more than happy to do.
Well, I've only matched with, I think, Diplo, and he's never around. I don't think
That's not going well.
He's not very keen.
He's never around.
He actually never responded to me either. I think John Mayer maybe. Oh no,
John Mayer, interesting.
there's a couple, but they don't ever seem to be in Perth or Sydney, so I haven't had much luck.
Good. So sorry. That's a part of the problem that it got to September, October. I had those two parts: the getting straight on a date and the revenue model, but there was something missing. And then I went on a Hinge date actually, and I was talking about my concept to the girl. She worked in sales at a tech company, and I said, "There's something broken. I've been working at this for 2 or 3 months full time. The matching is going to be what AI algorithm, but I don't really like that." And she said straight away, "Why don't you get users to choose a bestie and get them to swipe for you?" And I was like, oh my God. And there was a number of reasons why that was so awesome. So from that next day on, I was full-time on Hello Darling. And then circle back to your actual question of why Bridgette. So I'd been studying early stage startups for about 5 years. So global technology companies in America, and really had probably that early piece, which is essentially like before your probably Series A funding round of how to get the startup off the ground, and all the advice from Y Combinator, Paul Graham, Jessica Livingston was it's someone that's determined.
Yeah.
So you could do a startup on your own, I think, in dating as a male founder, but I didn't think personally that I could.
Yeah.
There's not 2,000 books that I could read to get the psyche of a female and how they think and things.
True.
So I was like, for me, I need a female co-founder. And again, all the advice was someone determined, and I immediately thought of Bridgette.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in that, it was like, I need someone that can go the distance. And so this was sort of October, and then I flew back to Perth for Christmas, had a long lunch at Lido down at Cottesloe. It was
Where all good ideas stem
all
from.
good ideas come from.
Unless you get kicked out of the venue, but
Does that happen to you?
so many times. They always let me back though. It's so weird.
So yeah, so we had a 4 or 5 hour long lunch, and Bridgette was looking to start a new business, so it was kind of good timing.
Yeah.
And I just said, obviously the only two catches, you can't do any of that, and you've got to move to Sydney.
How did you feel about moving to Sydney, Bridge? Because you've obviously got a young family, and that's a huge move.
Yeah, I think it had to work for both Luke and I, which I was lucky it did. But besides, I'd lived in Bali for 3 years.
Yeah.
But besides that, I'd lived in Perth my whole life.
Yeah.
And I was getting like itchy feet. So it was kind of exciting, the thought of moving to Sydney. It was just the logistics that I was trying to get my head around. But I came over to Sydney in January, just after our lunch, just to like scout. Brendan was getting me all excited, like taking me to all the Merivale lunches.
You did the research.
We did Freds, we did Mimi's, we did Bill's.
Yeah.
Did you actually?
Yeah.
The big three.
Well, it's easier than just doing meetings for a few months trying to convince someone. You take them to Mimi's, Freds 3 days in a row, and they're like...
And then we also looked at a beautiful apartment for me to rent down on the beach.
Which we
So
didn't getting, so that was kind of like...
But I was like, it was at we were at a Mimi's lunch, And I hadn't even told Luke at that point that I was going to accept this.
You actually already accepted at lunch. You're like, I'll just call Luke and pretend that like it's a discussion.
I swear I saw a photo of you guys shaking hands.
Yes, that's
that
exactly
photo.
that.
Yeah. So I was pretty sold. I knew after walking away from that first lunch at Alito, I was pretty certain like I was going to say yes.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons, like just I'd been working with Amore and Civet like basically on my own for 14 years, had staff coming and going.
Yeah.
But it excited me like working with someone that was similar to me in terms of business determination, like having a mindset for like a big dream.
Yeah.
And I had to get my head around like not launching the business I had started working on for 12 months, and I had finished all my formulations for a skincare brand, and then it was like, okay, I'll put that aside, and like I see this as kind of like a bigger
decision.
It's a really interesting concept.
It was skincare products and tans made out of ocean botanicals.
Oh,
so like, yeah,
weed and dolphins and
don't put
little baby turtle. That's a really cool idea. That could be the next idea.
Yeah.
Bridge, obviously, why Brendan is your co-founder.
Yeah, I think that I loved working with Brendan up till like he asked me. I was quite surprised when we were at lunch and he was telling me about the concept of Hello Darling, and I was like, this is interesting. But I had no idea. He then turned around and said, will you be my co-founder? After a few drinks, I was like pretty merry. But yeah, I think he's very similar to me in terms of business. He's very determined. Though he like lacks a little bit of empathy.
I'm very low on empathy. Close to zero. I feel it, but I don't like bathe in it.
Yeah.
Bridge likes running a bath in it, so we're at polar opposites.
Like marinating it.
Yeah, it works well.
Like for a lot of scenarios.
Yeah.
Especially in the dating segment.
Yeah.
No, that I think I definitely feel the sense, but I think there's a lot of things where it
business-wise
comes in handy. Or just even like user things, as in looking at different screens. If something happens, I'll be like, oh, well, I would think that sucks. But Bridge was like, no, that's like so bad, and I would feel all these things. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting, you know? And that's the other part of, like I said before, I think you could do a dating app as a sole male founder, but I didn't think I could.
Yeah.
I think you need a female touch for sure.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Even though like Brendan has feminine in him, he does need some empathy. But I think that also Brendan's got the big picture in his head, and it was like, I knew that's where I wanted to go.
How did Hello Darling come about? Like, why? I know you were saying that you were starting looking at all these like fintech or how did you get to a dating app?
Well, yeah, Hello Darling was the dating app was one of my concepts, and it was a number of things of what I'd looked at through other dating apps on both sides. So the product side that I think needed fixing, and then again on the revenue model side that people don't like paying for dating apps.
Yeah.
And I was Hello Darling's no startup's easy, but Hello Darling is really difficult in the stages that we need to get to, because obviously you have to get users. We're building essentially two marketplaces side by side. So we have to bring users, and then we have to plug in venues and have formal partnerships with venues, and all that comes with that. You know, when people want to reschedule a date, we have to reschedule the venue, you know.
Do you guys do all that groundwork yourself at the moment?
Yeah, so we've built a proprietary venue booking system ourselves.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's mostly that at the moment, and some of our involvement because we're early on. So we just finished our 20th week, so that's ever growing. So eventually, at the end game, that will do anything and everything that we need it to do.
So does that booking system, is that like a third party booking system separate to the venues? How does that work?
So it's our booking system that will eventually plug in with APIs into the venues.
Okay.
So similar to an open table.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way we kind of explain it as a sort of an elevated pitch is we're like if Bumble and Open Table had a baby.
Okay,
it's
great.
kind of a booking system and a dating app,
which
is really hard to get done.
Yeah.
So that's why we're working like crazy to try to sort of build all that stuff.
I think for venues, it's kind of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you want to be working with a platform that is essentially designed to funnel business into their restaurants?
Yeah, well, you know venues.
Yeah,
where
exactly.
You've worked in your business the last few years. That's probably another part of how Hello Darling has kind of come together in the way I see things is I've always been very, very critical and skeptical of non-accountable marketing costs.
Yeah.
So if someone says, give me 20 grand, but I can't tell you what business you're going to get, and it's good for awareness. And I know that plays a part, branding plays a part, but I think from my point of view, I've had small businesses. I've had small businesses with high margin, and I've had small businesses with low margin, that being a bookstore, which there's no lower margin than that.
Yeah.
And you can't, people are like, oh, you're doing social media marketing, paid ad spends. And if you work out the break-even cost on a low-margin small business, you can't get there. So my view was in this, we are a success-based only marketing fee. If we don't put bums in seats at the venue doesn't pay us anything. Plus, there's no cash outlay.
See, for me, so obviously my PR and marketing business is solely focused on the hospitality industry. So when I take on a client and, this is what your retainer is, these are our KPIs, this is what we're trying to achieve, but I can't guarantee anything. As a small business owner, if they're not a company that owns multiple venues, they want to know that what they're paying me is going to translate to bums on seats. I cannot guarantee that. I can do as much as I can, give them a plan and a strategy, but at the end of the day, I can't guarantee that. So for me, as a PR and marketing person, working with someone like Hello Darling and then connecting it with my client is ideal for me because they can directly track what I'm doing and see that what they're doing equates to bums on seats, essentially. So it's really a win-win in my eyes for the daters and the venue. It's quite genius, actually.
Thank you. So, so that there's kind of different parts to it of how it came about. It was like my sort of skepticism of non-accountable marketing costs. It was the venue part with the revenue model. I'd done B2B sales for 10 years. So there's a number of, and Bridgette and I are non-technical, and that's another sort of tough one in the sense of we have a CTO, Kai Moon, but the other hard part is so say as an example, like Bridgette and I couldn't go into AI right now and start building AI. That's a full-on technical startup. Whereas I think Hello Darling, there was different parts that we all could bring. So I could bring the revenue model side and the B2B sales side in setting up venues. Bridgette is a lot more branding, and she's the creative on the team, which this is a startup and it's a technology startup, but we're in the consumer segment.
Yeah.
And you've seen our marketing around, it's a very large part how people make decisions in the consumer segment. And then obviously Kai brings in the technology piece. So to answer the sort of round in circles, but there's a number of parts of how I thought for a startup, and I haven't been a founder of a startup before, that why Hello Darling, I thought we as a non-technical team could get down the path to build value to then hopefully, raise money, in the next 12, 18 months and things like that. So that's kind of like, I probably didn't answer it directly, but that's kind of how it all sort of came together.
I feel like you're bringing the human side to the technical side. So especially when you talk about AI, I know that AI is directly kind of built on our human interaction, but it seems quite a disconnected way of formulating like ideas. And like, you were saying when you're building people's like dating profiles and people like matching with the whole algorithm thing, it's still so interesting that you've got a friend doing it for you, and then you guys are the ones that are actually setting up these dates. And
it's interesting on that you say with the AI, because we were talking about this the other day, that we think dating, and this is a guess, but we think the dating segments are going to split off into two. We think Hello Darling is going to be essentially the first of a new category dating app, which is in real life experiences, and you do the assessment of the other person, which everyone does, but instead of doing it before the first date, do it after the first date. Whereas Bridge said something really good a couple of weeks ago, which we hadn't had those words yet. She said to someone, we're not a shopping list dating app. Whereas in a lot of times, and I get it, everyone wants something different, they do a full analysis like on a spreadsheet before they even accept the first date.
Absolutely.
So we think that Hello Darling will be one of the first of a new category dating app where you do in real life first, and then you assess compatibility after, and then the other category will be AI. And it absolutely makes sense. If you have a shopping list thought in your mind of what you want, I want a finance bro, 6'5", blue eyes. That can be for you, and that will actually work. And what the industry reports show is that people tend to use two dating apps at any one time.
Yeah.
So you could have an AI dating app and you could use Hello Darling and just see how you go and meet people in real life. So there's your three options.
It's funny that you say that, because obviously when I was on Maths, that was kind of the concept of the show. We tell them what we like, what we don't like, what's worked for us in the past, what we've genuinely been attracted to. But then these experts choose someone without that without us knowing who they are, what they look like, and the whole purpose of us getting married at first sight is so that we are now locked in, we are married, and instead of going through that laundry list of they fit this, they don't fit this, or I checked out their Instagram and I don't like their goatee and whatever, you just have to kind of focus on the more important things and figure out those little things later down the line. So it's a very similar concept. I feel like you guys would have a better success rate though.
I think it's all like Brendan said, we don't want people just to sit there and chat for hours and hours and hours and get the ick before you've even met them, because it's like
100%.
You know, you meet someone at a bar and you just vibe and connect with them, and you don't have a measuring tape to see how tall they are. Like, are they over 6 foot? Like, we don't want people just to chat for hours. Like, we want them to just meet in person, have a coffee or a drink. It could be half an hour, it could be an hour. And if you've got a connection with them,
then go from there.
Then go to compatibility. It's not for everyone. Like, a lot of people want that compatibility list, but we're trying to give it a chance. Like, Bumble's now going into AI, and we're like, we want in real life connection. Like that, we're kind of completely opposite to what they're doing.
I love that. See, I've really spent very little time on any dating app. I remember when I first moved to Sydney years ago when I was quite young, I had been in a really long-term relationship for like 6 years. And I finished that relationship and I got on the apps and I was like, I don't want to do this small talk. And so like if I'd matched with a dude, I'd be like, hey, what are you doing right now? Let's go have a coffee. Or like, what are you doing tonight? I wasn't interested in the like cringy, like back and forth. Like, you know, when some dudes drop like what's your like death row meal, like something like that, I'm like, oh, shut the fuck up, like let's just go have a drink, you know?
Yeah, because you're not wasting your time doing that as well. Like, you could be wasting your time for weeks and hours online when you're actually not attracted to them at all.
Exactly. And it's also, most people don't have the time these days anyway to sit and chat with multiple people with boring conversation. Like, you just want to see if there's that vibe in person.
And that's the comment that you said before is in the maths and the obviously psychologists, and they understand who you might. Obviously, the whole part is that the filter of Hello Darling is your bestie, and a lot of the time it might be your cousin, brother, sister, co-workers. So the filter of that, they're psychologists, but they don't know you, Loz. Like, so the whole part is like, if one of your besties looks at someone's like, no, I know Loz will hate that, or I know Loz would love that.
100%.
And sometimes it's within a range that when we first did our wireframes for version 1 of Hello Darling, Bridge downloaded Hinge and Bumble because she's never used dating app before. And so she's looking at all these guys and she's like, oh, Brendan, look at this guy. Like, he's so hairy. Absolutely not. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Your husband, you tell me, is like quite hairy. And she's like, oh, yeah. So, but you met Luke first coming down the stairs, chance meeting like encounter or chance meeting encounter. You didn't consider the hair thing until months later.
Yeah.
So this is what's...
Or the height.
That's
all the
so
height.
true.
Height's a big one.
Yeah.
We've resisted adding height to Hello Darling, but we're going to add it. It's actually in the next version tomorrow.
Yeah.
As an option. And I get it. And typically for girls, that's more important.
As a tall girl, for me, it's important. But it's funny you say that thing. So, like, with my ex, we fell in love very quickly. We were just attracted to each other's personalities. And because I was already in love with him, there was certain, like, things about him that, like, if we hadn't fallen in love, I would have been like, ick, no. But because I fell in love with him and his personality, those things didn't bother me at all anymore. But if they kind of were presented themselves first, I would never have given it a chance.
So true.
That's 2020, but you know.
Like, if Luke had his height on the app, which was under 6 foot, I probably wouldn't have gone on a date with him.
Really? Is Luke under 6 foot?
Yeah.
That's tall.
And I'm like, you're short. He's like, no, most guys are like 5'11". And I was like, anything under 6 foot.
I was speaking to my cousin about this a few weeks ago because I was talking to him about like whether we're going to add height, whether we're not, because people ask for it. And we add the majority of things that our users want because that's what we're supposed to do as a start. But some things, like as an example, people write in and say, I want to see the profile before I go on the date. And that's not something we will ever allow at Hello Darling.
I love that.
So you don't see the profile until you arrive, and that's a whole part of doing what you said. But it's interesting. My cousin was like, that's interesting. So on the dating apps, because he's never used one either, he's saying, if you toggle a height, if the love of your life is 1 centimetre smaller, you will never see them.
Yeah.
You could never even consider them. So we're kind of saying, like, we get it, height's important, these things are important, but just catch up first for an hour or two, then analyse after.
100%.
And if it's that big a deal...
then just don't catch up again.
Yeah, I think and this is coming out more and more as we speak to people, and mostly friends, but it's interesting in the mindset that people say that talking to someone for 2 weeks isn't a waste of time for them, but catching up with someone for 1 hour may be a waste of time. It's interesting how they balance those things. Whereas we're like, don't talk for 2 weeks, just catch up.
I totally agree, and that's why I've always been of the mind frame, like, I don't want to have this small talk with you, like, let's go meet up, like, and just circling back to what you were saying about, you know, your bestie swiping and choosing for you. After I got married on the show, literally every single person at my wedding, besides one of my best friends, Lucy, we now know, was like, nah, this is not her dude. She's not going to like him. Not going to work. Like, every single person. I think Lucy was hoping that because he wasn't, she knew it wasn't my usual, he wasn't my usual type, she was hoping that it might work. Like, don't go for that, you know, the standard type that hasn't worked. But in her gut, she obviously knew that it just wasn't going to be for me, but she hoped that it was someone different. But every person at that wedding, even you guys, and we, I mean,
what a nice surprise.
No, I thought I don't want to make comments.
No, but you know what I mean. We all thought that this wasn't right, didn't we?
He was nice, and he was like more quieter than.
I think the nice thing is doesn't always come off as it's always going to work out, especially some of your strong.
And it wasn't because he did anything wrong or said anything wrong. It was nothing to do with.
It was more the niceness. So
it was just the gel. It was the chemistry with the personalities. It was just totally different. It was nothing wrong with him at all. But you know, when you know someone,
your friends will know, like if they were swiping and things. So I think. That's obviously the big part of the filter that AI can get really good on shopping lists. Height, work, whatever you want, where do you live, but the bestie in regards to that. But it's interesting, there's some things that we can't account for in the dating app, and there's things that we talk about all the time, but it's really interesting, like we think in regards to like what it's gotten to with all those things that we discussed, as in like prefer to speak sometimes for 1 to 2 weeks than go to catch up for an hour. So there's things that we're trying to sort of unpack and add in.
I also think with AI, like it can never override the empathy and feeling of a human. No matter, and in the dating segment, I think that's just very important.
I agree. And with the whole like bestie choosing, how does that work? Does the friend make a profile for you?
So you can come onto the app as a godparent, which is what we call as a friend. It could be a godfather, a godmother, or a godparent. Yeah. Or you could come in as the dater and you add the other person. So both people have the app on their phone, and then the dater sets up their own profile. Yeah. Say, for example, they're the one on there first. The dater sets up their profile first, invites a bestie. It can be up to 3 besties that can swipe for you. Okay. And then once the profile has been set up, it goes to the bestie to start swiping for you.
And does the bestie get to see? So the
bestie gets to see all the profiles.
And that includes photos and stuff?
Yeah, photos, but they can't
prompts.
Show you. It's up to, like, some people we know are screenshotting and sending it to the other person.
Can you see if they've screenshotted?
No.
Okay. We don't have that function.
No.
But we know, people tell us.
Yeah. Because you know on Raya you can't screenshot.
Can't screenshot. Yeah.
I'm on my third. Because I keep forgetting. The first thing you do when you're like, oh,
because you want to show a friend.
So you screenshot and I was like, oh shit. So yeah.
Is it to show a friend that you're doing
I just want to show my friend.
Yeah.
As humans, especially women, I don't know what men are like, but I know with my friends and I, the first thing you do when you see something online, screenshot, send it to your mate.
Yeah. And that's what we're loving, and that's what we've found. Like, I've been surprised with, and what makes me excited about this app is like the friendship side behind it. It's not just like romance love. Yeah. It's like bringing friends close together, and you know, we're taking user calls every day and hearing them, like they've got a Hello Darling chat group that they're all on. That's swiping cool. For each other. They're all on talking about it. They're all going to work and talking about it. People are getting involved in each other's dating life, which is like nice, because a lot of the time you're doing it on other dating apps, you're doing it alone. Yeah. And it's adding like the fun back into dating as well.
That's been some of the surprising. A user call last week, she said that it's brought her friendship group closer together, because normally the guys in their group don't give detail on their dating and the like, where she said now they'll be like, I got you on that date, what happened and how's it going?
They're interested.
Which there's all these things that have popped out that we didn't kind of...
Yeah. Do you find that it's more single girls swiping for their single friends, or is it?
I reckon it's probably
a mixture?
50-50.
Yeah.
I reckon it's 50-50. I'm swiping for Brendan.
Yeah.
Because I've never been on a dating app.
Yeah. Are you having fun with it?
I am loving it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I'm like, a lot of user calls that I'm talking to are in relationships and they're just like loving it.
Yeah.
Except like Luke is actually swiping for one of his friends. And so once it came through, because there's like an admirers tab, so people that have hearted my friends I can see. And Luke's actually hearted one of the people I'm swiping for, and I was like, oh, does that mean you reckon she's hot? Like,
I was just going to ask you.
I was like, she's my friend.
So that's what I was going to ask you that, because I started thinking, if I had a partner, right, and he's on there swiping for his mate, like checking out chicks, I that would breed insecurity in me. I think it's because I've had a rough trot with, infidelity in the past. So I'm like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, I just laugh it off.
How does that work?
It's a thing. And
it's a thing, yeah.
It's not like for every relationship, but I've kind of like laugh it off now. Or I realize I've got a heart from one of my friends from Luke, and I'm kind of like, oh, when did you swipe without me? Like, we didn't sit down and go through this list together.
But you're right. There will be parts of that which is not great, but maybe
what
some
about
covers will shut that down.
The friend is like swiping for you, but then she likes that dude?
You can't steal. Like, we have no steal function. Like,
really,
we are looking at adding a favourites list. So a list, would you call it a favourites list? So that, if I'm swiping for Brendan, but I think she would be better for, I could add her to the favourites and then match her up with Kai later.
And how do the matches come up? Is it by location? Is it by like filters, or is it just?
It's just as soon as two people have hearted each other.
Okay.
It's a match. They can anywhere in Sydney, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then our venue book. So we get the postcodes of both daters. So our venue booking system lays the postcodes over above each other, and then we pick somewhere mutually convenient.
Do they get a say in where they go, or is
no,
it?
not as yet. No,
I like that idea.
It's two strangers essentially. So, like, think of the example you use. Think of your 20 best friends. If you were to book a lunch, 3 or 4 of those people aren't going to be happy with what you chose.
Yeah, exactly.
Let alone two strangers. Plus, we need to take into account a number of things with
vegans.
Venues. Yep. Dietary requirements. We have to take into account what happens if they have one drink and leave and don't order food. Is that venue going to be angry at us?
Yeah.
So we're picking a lot more pubs.
It's actually
styles.
a really good question. Yeah.
So that's a big consideration for us. So at the moment, we're trying to pick bigger pubs with bigger floor plans that have the space, that if they have one drink each and leave, the venue doesn't,
they don't lose out on a dinner seat.
Yeah, they don't lose out on it. Because if we book a nice white tablecloth Italian restaurant, they have, one Negroni and leave each. They're not going to be too stoked with us. We're going to get to those venues and we can't wait. And that might be a different tier in that we sort of implement. But so the two postcodes, we then normally do it in the middle. So say if you're in Bondi and you're in Newtown, the date might be in Surrey Hills or Paddington.
Yeah.
And then we propose, we let you know what the suburb is, what the time is.
Yeah.
And then you essentially go about scheduling with the other person. As in, if that's not available to you, you then let us know on the scheduling tool.
Okay. And so can you see what they like, who they are? Like, can you go and like Google them or Instagram them?
So if you're the dater, all you have is a first name. And unless you cheat and sit with your godparent, which that's an interesting part. We haven't shut down screenshots or anything yet. This is kind of our view. Not to say that won't ever happen, but I had a user call a couple of weeks ago and the girl said she's been on 3 Hello Darling dates now. The first date, she wanted to see the photos because it was her first date. Then after that, the next 2 dates, she didn't want to see anything. She's like, I'm comfortable. I get it now. So we understand that an entry point for some people might be having a peek at a photo or two.
Yeah.
But over 50% are doing it by not... Actually, some godparents, Bridgette especially early on, she's like, do you want a peek? Like, do you want to know a prompt?
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
Yeah.
But then sometimes I'm like, maybe a prompt. Tell me a prompt.
Yeah.
Like, we're sitting... So it's up to you and your
Give me a
godparent.
teaser.
It's up to, you and your godparent.
But we have like we've learned so much along the way from like just launching it. And then we've kind of gone into the psychology of like how that person is feeling at that time, where they need safety, where do they need comfort.
Yeah.
And one thing that we found was that people wanted, we thought because it's a blind date, they haven't seen each other. They're nervous whether that person's going to rock up. And because there was no chat function, it was like they wanted or had their number or anything. It's like a little bit daunting. So we then opened up chat 72 hours before the date where you can send 3 messages each way.
Yeah.
So you can say, looking forward to seeing you. Is it still on tonight? Like,
and if something happens, they can actually reach out and say, look, I'm running late. Sick, or I'm running late. I had a car accident.
There's all those buttons on there for running late, reschedule, all that. But the message, as Bridgette was saying, it's interesting what comes out. Some people assume it's like, oh, you do the 3 messages so they get to know each other. But really it was just for comfort to be like, Loz, looking forward to Friday night.
Yeah.
And that's enough. You're like, great. Like, you know, that's all I kind of
It's
need.
just the comfort that they need, that they're actually going to be there and they're actually like...
Because originally that wasn't in our version 1.
No.
Like we want to fool, like we want to preserve.
And it was a big decision. We're going back for ages going like, should we add chat? And then we kind of got, okay, what about it's 72 hours before and it's only 3 messages. So there's no chit chat and bullshit beforehand.
I think that it adds like this sense of like,
mystery
and excitement. If you've already fully sussed them out, you know where their mother's husband's
their exes,
cousin likes to get their coffee in the morning, you know all about their exes. It just really takes out so much of the getting to know you phase that you would have on a first date. It's kind of like, I really think the idea of a blind date is so romantic and so old, and it's kind of been lost in this whole world of dating.
Yeah, I think that's where, with a lot of part of this concept early on, we were like, we're a startup, we're trying to be a technology company. So but how can you connect that with things that have not changed and will not change? And those things like that, if you end up going on a hello darling date, it's like, oh my God, like I haven't felt that for years, you know, like because you've looked at Instagram, LinkedIn, you've made up half your mind based on chat. So it's interesting in that where for some people's excitement might be other people's anxiety, and we hope that we add things to try and quell that. But it's so true. And there's such interesting trends that have come out, and obviously they're changing all the time. But like what I hear so much from like girl mates and girls in our co-working space is they're just like, oh, like, I was like, when was the last time you've been asked out in real life? And they're like, years. As in everything's like DM. Yeah. You know, girls have said for such a long period of time. Actually, I had a date earlier this year and I made a reservation at a restaurant and she said, oh, gee, my friends were impressed. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, that just doesn't happen. Like guys are normally like, oh, let's just drop in and see if we can get into like somewhere to have a drink. And the girls are like, make a reservation.
Yeah,
so,
you want to
put in the effort. And also people I've been chatting to that are on other dating apps, like traditional dating apps, they are waiting, they're chit-chatting and they're waiting to be asked out and they're not getting asked out. And even the hottest people that I've spoken to, she's like, you know, I won't name her, but she's like, I haven't been asked out in years. Yeah. And I was like, that just surprises me.
Do you know what? And another thing, I don't know what the other dating apps are like, but I know on Raya, you can see if you match with a dude, you can see who your mutuals are. So, like, it comes up with, like, girls that I know that he's
been chatting to.
It must be because it says, like, mutual. And I'm like,
also
I don't want to chat to a dude that's chatting to girls I know. Yeah. Like, I want to, and if he is, great. I don't want to know
you
about
want him
it.
Pure. You want him
I
pure.
want him pure, like me. I want him pure like me. It's real pure. You know, virginal and whatnot. You don't want to feel like you're in a like
you're back in Perth in the western suburbs with everyone that's been with everyone.
We're in Bondi where like everyone's been with everyone, and even if they have, like, you just don't want to feel like you're in a pool of other people.
No,
that's why I love that when you go out and you meet someone at a bar or wherever and there's a spark and they're like, oh, can I have your number? That to me is so cool. It doesn't happen. No. I can't remember the last time that happened, but that's how I met my last partner. It was, we were out and we met like that way. I don't like this internet crap, and that's why I really am keen and so excited to join up with Hello Darling.
Yeah, and it's the same way I met my husband 10 years ago, which is like...
I know how you met your husband. I don't know how. You met in like a stairwell. Yeah. Like, you passed each other, didn't you?
So I had just done a photo shoot for my swimmer brand and Ryan Murphy was my photographer. I went to Ryan to get my USB with all the photos on it, went back to my shop and the USB wasn't working and I was really annoyed and I called him up and he was like, just come, I'll swap the USB over. So as I went up to his studio in Freo, he quickly gave me the USB, and as I was walking out, Luke was coming up the stairs to meet him for lunch. So we kind of just met in the hallway. Ryan wasn't there yet, but he just stopped me and shook my hand and introduced himself and said, "Hi, I'm Luke." And I just thought he was the hottest thing I had.
So cool.
Like, I went bright red, put my head down and said bye, and ran down the stairs.
He's a confident guy, and when he speaks, it's very.
He was like, he's confident but not cocky, and I was like, that's what I need, because I'd been with a lot of dicks over the years.
Been a lot of dicks.
Dickheads. And then
same girl, same, don't worry.
And then I messaged Ryan and I was like, who is that? He's either like gay or taken. Like he's not like single. And he said he's just asking the same about you, and he's asking for your number.
It's a nice moment.
Yeah.
I love that. I had that with someone, and it was like saying we met through a mutual friend, and the next day I was like, oh, that guy was great. Like, you know, is he single? What's his number? And they were like, oh, well, he's actually already asked for your number.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's the best feeling.
Yeah.
And then you get that giddiness, and it's exciting. And like, you don't even like, this guy didn't even have Instagram, so there was none of that. We just had to get to know each other.
Yeah. And that's the thing with the mutual friend that's introducing you as well. They get so excited and giddy for you. Like me being the godparent and swiping for other people, like I'm taking this real seriously. Yeah. And then, you know, I actually see on my end when their dates are. So, like, I know that they've got a date coming up because it has the date on there.
Yeah.
And so the next day I'm always like, or I'm pretty much calling Brendan that night and being like, how did that date go?
Like,
how did that?
I walk out of a date, so how'd it go?
Or like I'm messaging
I would
midway.
follow you there, and I'll sit in the back of the
Rick wanted
restaurant.
to do that for a Hello Darling date 20 weeks ago. She goes, can we go to the venue and like watch them? It's like, absolutely not. But I like your eagerness.
I would fully do that.
I'm so invested.
Yeah, I honestly, like, all I want to do right now is ring Lucy and be like, get swiping.
Yes.
Interesting, the thing you said before is in when you met that person, which, like, if I think of the things that have like rang in my ears, in people say time and time again, year after year, is I never meet anyone. That's such a thing that you hear, guys, girls, I never meet anyone. And that was back to the original problem that we were talking about earlier. It's like we can get caught up in like technology and features and buttons and push notifications, but it's like and I said this a few weeks ago on socials, you can only use Hello Darling for one thing, and that is to actually meet someone. You can't use it for validation, you can't use it to send nudes, you can't use it to endlessly chat. It's like, if you're not up for the concept, it's like, and we get it, like maybe Hinge and Bumble and Tinder are for you,
but you could have you could have both.
Yeah, you can
have
both.
those for the you know, there are a lot of dudes out there that crave that validation. They don't even meet these women on these dates. They just want to see how many matches they can get, and I'm sure there's obviously women like that too. That doesn't float my boat for me. I like to meet someone in person and feel like a spark that really gets me going. I'm not interested. You know, I've got dudes in the DMs saying they want to see bobs and vagine. Like, you know, I don't need.
Is that true?
You know how like there's that guy that's like, let me see your bobs. But
what's
like,
a bob?
Like boobs?
Oh, I haven't.
He's this Indian guy, and then it turned into like this whole meme and this TikTok, and it just became this thing, bobs and vagine. But yeah, I want like that. To me, doesn't get me going. I want to meet someone, and I want to feel something.
Yeah, so I think the feeling something like you said, and then you asked, and they said, "Oh, he's actually just asked for your name."
And honestly, that was like one of the best moments ever. I was so excited.
It's a pretty pure moment, which we can't fully recreate that, but what we're trying to do is your bestie stands in the place of that magic moment. They get you there. We book the venue for you. All you got to do is rock up.
And I also think it adds an element of accountability. Like, if your friend is going to the effort to do this for you, show up to the date. Like, I would be more inclined to go knowing that a friend had done that for me. I am really bad at cancelling things. Like, if I've ever been asked out on a date, I honestly have pretty much cancelled every single time. I like to meet someone like organically, and then I've never really done the like slide into the DMs or like dating up and then gone on a date. But if I knew that a friend had like put in time and chosen someone, I would be more inclined to go.
Yeah.
Let's get you on, love.
I'm so excited. What's been the best surprise in business since launching Hello Darling?
Best surprise.
I reckon for me, it's like the friendship side, like not just the romance. but like hearing how giddy girls get over like doing something for their friend.
Yeah.
And hearing people that they're all on chats together talking about it, like not for our business. Like, I mean, it's great word of mouth for us.
Yeah.
But just hearing how much people are loving dating again on dating apps because they're just so often on other dating apps because they're so fatigued. So the fact that we're bringing the fun, not just the romance, back into it, like makes me really happy. And also we've heard a few stories where someone's gone on a date, like one of our friends went on a date. They said that they wouldn't have swiped right on this person, but they ended up being on the date for 4 hours and they're now going on a second date or a third date.
Yeah, we love those ones.
Like,
I love
it's
that.
like, yeah, like I'm just so excited to, like, someone posted the other day, hello darling couple, and they were holding hands, and I was like, is that our first hello darling couple? I went running over to Brendan and was like, look, it's happening.
So they are a couple now?
We don't know. We spoke to her about a month ago, like, 'cause it was a bit, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's super. That would be the most exciting.
It's like
milestone.
reward.
I feel
It's very rewarding.
Yeah.
And I love working with Brendan. I know I'm like very emotional.
He sends me like 40 stuff today on DM on Instagram, text me, Slack.
Like I just have like we have so much fun together. I think.
We actually can't sit at the actually we for the first year we sat at the same table, and now we've got to sit at separate tables because like 85% of the time we'll talk about random stuff like Esther
That's
Perel
like
books,
when you're at school.
and then 15% of the time we'll fight about like random shit like units of saturated fat in a kebab. so now we're
All
at
the
separate
important
tables.
stuff.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God, Esther Perel. You guys should start a Hello Darling podcast and like just talk to people that have like people, users and daters and
Yeah.
Esther Perel.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God, I fucking love her.
What's been your surprise, Brendan?
I like that. The friendship one has been interesting because friends saying like it's brought our friendship group closer together, like the chat groups that they've started because it's good. I think for mine, it's probably been a couple of user calls in the last 2 weeks where it was 2 godparent user calls, and the godparents have said, look, I've been in a relationship for 8, 9, 10 years. I've never used a dating app. So I get to do this for the first time, which I'm loving. And you can tell they're not just giving like just general positive feedback. They're like, I am telling anyone that will listen to me at work, at my sporting club, whatever, about Hello Darling. And it's like, you need to get on this. So I think that level of, and again, like it sounds pretty obvious, but like all the stuff I'd read and listened to researching startups for over that 5 years, it is a startup is absolutely obsessed with the customer. Like you talk about, say Jeff Bezos and these people, and even at large levels, at big company levels, they're like, you just have that obsession with the customer. And to hear that like people are like, I'm literally telling anyone that will listen to me and they're kind of saying it as in they're getting annoying to other people.
Yeah.
So I think to hear that like, the concept works at its core, that people are telling people about it, and that it's giving them something different. Again, like if we listen to 100% of feedback, we would redesign Hinge and Bumble. So we listen to 90% of feedback and we keep the main pillars.
Yeah.
You don't see the profile before, we book the venue, your bestie swipes.
Yeah.
Done. Everything else is kind of up for chat discussion. Like we added the chat and a few different things.
Yeah.
So I think the sheer customer like feedback is, for me, is like, that's a KPI. Like we could talk about like our sort of 8 to 10% week on week user growth and all that type of stuff. But it's like, if you can get at a core customers loving the product.
Yeah.
And again, like those things of like the Instagram post and things like that, it's like, that's it. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
Your fundamentals are aligning with your user. Like they
Yeah,
actually are coming
yeah.
back for a product that you designed and why you designed it.
Exactly. And if you can do that, you can grow the company, and you can get it out to more people, and sure, we get a bigger valuation, all these type of things. But I think at its core, it's like, that's when you start hearing that, I'm like, said to the guys yesterday on Slack, it's like the word of mouth is, I use the word bonkers. We're only 20 weeks in, so it's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm really starting to see it the last 2 to 4 weeks, the word of mouth, the people that I'm meeting on the street, different things.
Yeah.
So that's kind
And
of
word of mouth is the most organic way of growing anything. Like that's essentially what you want.
Yes.
Is word of mouth. Like
Yes.
you don't get a better recommendation or a better new customer or client or user than them doing it because they trusted what someone close to them said.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So there's actually there's two elements to the bestie that is really good. They sit in the place of the algorithm and they're the filter, but then also, like you're saying, they're our word of mouth tool. So when we get one data as a user, we actually get 4 because we get their 3 godparents.
Yeah.
So we do paid marketing at the moment, but a lot of our user growth is via just word of mouth, which is really good. So,
and like what you were saying, you know, especially with women, and I'm sure men are the same, but I know as soon as there's a prospect of a date or anything, you tell multiple of your friends and you're all discussing it, then they're all looking into it. So it grows quickly. So Bridge, have you been swiping for Brendan? And have you found anyone good? Like, has there been any success?
Yeah, I think
repeat dates?
Yeah, there was one particular person where
a couple of months ago, I think.
Yeah, and Brendan tried calling me straight after the date.
She was asleep. It was like 7:45. 8:39.
And I was like, what's going on? Like, freaking out, what's wrong? And he was like, I think he just messaged me because I was in bed and said, I just had the most beautiful date I've ever been on. Like, and he came to work the next day and, man, he was loved up.
He wasn't interested, so we never saw each other again. But I think pretty brutal. But I think...
but even like, I was like, Brendan, what are we doing for lunch today? And he was like, I'm not eating because I'm lovesick. And he was like, it's a thing. And I was like, fuck.
But I think that's interesting. So like, it's interesting in those
Bridge got it right.
Absolutely. I was like, holy shit. Like, you never know what to expect. Like, you haven't met the person, you haven't chatted. So.
And you think that this only happens like a couple of times in your lifetime? Well,
to me, it's only been maybe like a few times. So, but it's interesting in that where,
did you have to spoil it by saying like she didn't want to see me?
I think it's like, from my point of view, I was like, holy crap, like, you know, that doesn't happen like every few years. It's probably even less than that. But it's interesting when there's been a few times where we've actually probably spent more money on marketing earlier than what we thought, only because we've seen things of where it's worked really well.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, well, because we've got a few years of cash runway, and we're like, all right, we'll keep extending that. But we were like, no, like, we've already hit KPIs and indicators that we've been looking for that we thought would take 12 months.
Yeah.
And that is only one for me of other ones. Like some other dates, as an example, that I've been on Hello Darling, we didn't see each other, both didn't see each other again, but I walked out of the date going, that gave it every chance to.
Yeah.
Rather than maybe on a traditional dating app, we wouldn't have swiped right on each other. But I was like, should we go for 3.5 hours? So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, you know, that's something. And then that other example of the girl a couple of months ago where I was like super interested, but she wasn't. I was like, whoa. So there's been some things like that where we've gone faster now.
Yeah.
Because we're like, all right, we've seen these things, we've worked them out.
What have been your most successful marketing campaigns or tactics or strategies?
I would say the traditional marketing, like all our street posters, decals. We've
interesting
billboards.
That is so interesting.
Yeah, we haven't actually spent much money on paid ads yet, like digital marketing, which has really surprised me because with Amore and Savette, it was 90% digital marketing.
Yeah,
and I think that traditional marketing, it's actually standing out because not many people are actually going back to in-person, in real life marketing.
Yeah.
And everyone's seeing it. Like everyone I speak to, they're like, I've seen your posters everywhere.
Yeah.
And we've got QR codes on there. Yeah. So I would say majority of our signups have been from the posters and the other part has been like word of mouth.
Yeah.
That's so cool and so interesting to hear.
It's refreshing.
It kind of makes sense, I think.
It aligns with the business, though, doesn't it?
In real life.
Yeah.
I think, it matches up in real life. It matches up. We've only launched in Sydney. We're not in Melbourne or anywhere else yet. So I think digital obviously works and a lot of different people use it. But I think to show in real life marketing shows people in Sydney, like, we are actually here.
Yeah.
We're not just doing paid ads around the country, overseas. So I think that's the interesting part about those posters. People can see our branding, the creative work that Bridge does. And then they, that can kind of change their mind. Because some people are 50-50. They're like, don't know if that's for me. See a bit of branding, see a bit of storytelling. And they're like, no, I kind of like it.
Yeah. I think the storytelling is the important part. If people get the key message that this is for you to meet someone in real life, like IRL hashtag, that's the way to go. Well, it's been seriously eye-opening chatting with you guys. I think that anyone who listens to this conversation will definitely be signing up to Hello Darling. It's completely, in my opinion, kind of changed my view on dating and dating apps. It doesn't need to be this hook up fast kind of laundry list of people. So It's been great to chat with you guys.
Thanks lots.
Yeah, I can't wait to get swapped.